Hey, how's it going, YouTube? How y'all doing today? As of right now, okay, well, I'm about probably 1 month away from really needing to put a lot of cattle together, and I need to put them together very rapidly. My big plan right now for, I guess, these next 3 months or so, my big plan for these next 3 months is that by January, I will have a lot of animals to take to market. If I put a lot of animals together in September this year, and then I take them to market in January of next year, that puts me in a very good position to make a lot of money next year, and the cattle market is doing very well. So my big goal is to make as much money as possible in the cattle market as of right now. I'm looking to put a lot of animals together in September of this year. If at all possible, I'd even do it sooner, depending on what's going on. And then I'll have to see what my opportunities are. I've got a couple of ranchers that I know around here, but I don't know how their calves do in market. These little black Angus heifers, I don't know how they're gonna do in market. When I take them to market, I will find out. The market people will bid them away. So I will see how they do in market, and if they do real good, I know where to get them. So I got the money squared away. I got these cattle squared away. The next big thing that I need to look into is to what am I gonna do for my next lot of cattle? Because here's the thing, right? Is that the lighter the cattle get, the more difficult it becomes to raise them. So a 2.5 weight is harder than a 3.5 weight calf to raise. A 3.5 weight calf is harder than a 4.5 weight calf, etc., etc., all the way up to probably about 850 pounds. At about 8.5 weight, these animals don't really have issues. If I brought in 50 animals, maybe 2 of them would have problems. If they've all been vaccinated and they're all healthy, they've all been taken care of properly. If I brought in 8.5 weight animals, chances are only about 2 of them are going to need, 1 or 2 of them are going to need any sort of a medical intervention or anything like that. And so if they've been properly managed at about 8.5 weight, they practically going to have zero problems. But when I talk about bringing in 2.5 weight calves, from what I have seen, just from the information that I have personally collected, a 2.5 weight calf, this sale barn that I go to, that I'm looking into purchasing these graded animals from, they commingle their cattle. So if they got cattle from this rancher, they got cattle from this rancher, they got cattle from this rancher. If the cattle look pretty similar, if the cattle look alike, they'll group them together, and that's called commingling, and they'll sell them together. So when calves are commingled, chances are there is a much higher chance of them developing some kind of an illness, usually a respiratory illness. But when it gets real hot outside like it is right now, and it gets real sunny and real dry, these animals, if they're drinking out of a pond, the chances are some of them may also start developing salmonella or E. coli. These animals, that's why when I see some of these animals having spurting problems right now, when I see them scouring right now, I know that there is a possibility that there is a E. coli or salmonella going around, because they're drinking that pond water. And these calves, with that pond water, will start evaporating pretty quickly, and so all that's left is like manure, and these cattle, they bathe in it, they swim around in it, and it's all sorts of nasty water. I give them an unlimited supply of fresh water, but they still go and drink that water. And that water, when they drink it and it starts drying up like that, there's a good chance that they're going to develop salmonella or E. coli. But with these animals at this size, when they're this size, the salmonella and the E. coli really is not a big problem. When they're smaller and it seems like it's going on for a real long time, if they are just having real bad, what I call death diarrhea, it's just coming out of them. That diarrhea just comes out of them just constantly all day, and they look like they're physically losing weight. They look like they're sucking up real bad. I'll give them a shot of oxytetracycline. At that point, I'll give them a shot of oxytetracycline, usually before that happens, but if I see that it's going to be a problem, I'll give them a shot of oxytetracycline. But as of right now, I don't think that it's going to be a big problem to these cattle. Some of them have been scouring, and some of them have been doing good. And one thing I've realized is that when I lowered the amount of feed that they got, their manure, their manure shaped up better. So their waste, their manure, it actually looks better now that they're getting less food. And so this right here, this ain't too bad. This manure right here, it ain't too bad, right? It's not like they scouring real bad or anything. So that's one thing that I realized as well, is that when I reduced the animals' feed, their manure started shaping up better. And so that's good too. I think that when I was giving them so much food that it was giving them acidosis is what I think is what's happening. But these animals, okay, so my big thing right now is that my next lot of animals, do I want to bring in heavier calves? Do I want to bring in 4.5 weight, 5 weight calves? Because if I bring them in 4.5 weight, 5 weight, and they're weaned, chances are I'm only going to have to give about 5 of them a shot of antibiotics. I'm only really going to have to work about 5 of them. But if I bring in 2.5 weight calves, 3.5 weight calves, from just the information that I have personally collected, even if they're commingled, even if they're vaccinated and everything, and weaned properly and vaccinated, chances are that I'm gonna have to give about 15 of them a shot of antibiotics. About 15 of them will end up getting sick. And the thing about these small animals getting sick is that if a 2.5 weight calf gets sick, it's gonna die very quickly. I mean, it literally takes 3 to 5 days from that animal from being sick to dying. So I have to give these animals medication. And as of right now, okay, so things that are mandatory on my schedule is that I have to work. I have to be at the shop 70 hours a week. That's mandatory. And so anything that I do after that, I can do in my own free time. So if I want to spend 40 hours a week out here working on the cattle, it needs to be outside of my 70-hour work week. So I need to go to the shop 70 hours a week. That is mandatory. I don't get to choose that. And so I've got that on my schedule, and sometimes it's a little bit more than 70 hours. And so if I need to run cattle, I need to run cattle, because if I don't run cattle, right, let's say right now I make 60,000 a year, right? If I make 60,000 a year, and about 15,000 comes from these about 20,000 came from these cows, so I make about 40,000 at my job, and then I get about 20,000 from these animals. These animals, I also get something called an unrealized gain from these animals. The money that I make on these animals is almost untaxable. It's not, these animals actually reduce my tax burden. So by raising cattle, I actually reduce the amount of taxes that I owe. Property taxes, income taxes, sales tax, I don't pay any of that. I hardly pay anything in terms of income tax. And I don't pay any sales tax, and my property tax is practically zero too. And so raising these cattle, like if I were to go out into the world today and I was gonna try and make $60,000 of take-home income, I'd actually have to make about 90 grand. Because if I made 90 grand and a third of it got taxed, I would be able to take home 60 grand. And so the whole thing about this thing is that these animals, right? If I raise these animals, I actually get a tax deduction. I get to write them off on my income tax. And next year, if I run 4 lot of animals and I make 10,000 a lot, that's 40,000. But here's the thing, right? Is that these animals, they have value too, and it's not taxed. So if let's say I have $20,000 worth of cattle here. I have $20,000 worth of cattle. That $20,000 is not taxed by the government. That's just money that I am retaining as equity in these cattle. And so it's unrealized gains. Until I sell these animals, I don't have to pay any tax, right? And these animals are going up in value every day. And so, and even when I do sell them, if I purchase more cattle, I can write that as an asset on my LLC, and I can write the income off on my I can write the income off on my taxes again. And so it's just a perpetual motion kind of thing. If I just leverage for enough cattle to reduce my income tax, that puts me in a situation where it's almost impossible to lose money raising cattle as long as my animals do not get sick. If my animals get sick and I start having animals die, that's when I start losing money. But the cost of the animal feed is negligible. The cost of the cattle, as long as they're graded properly, negligible. And so but I you know, and these animals, they give me a huge tax benefit, and I also make good money on them. And so you know, realistically, like if I was gonna go out into the world and try and make $120,000, I'd need to make closer to 200,000, because if I made $200,000, 80,000 would go to the government as tax, and then I'd be able to keep 120,000. So me being able to make 120,000 and pay almost zero tax on it is a very big deal. If people were actually going to try and make that much money, they would have to make astronomically more money just because they'd owe so much in taxes. Some of these places, they got 50% tax and stuff like that. And so, you know, a 30% tax, a 35% tax, let's say I make 200 grand and I pay 35% in tax, that's like 70 grand. And then it's like, and then if I make 200 grand, I can take home 130 grand. But if I run cattle, if I run these cattle and with my LLC and everything set up, if I make 120 grand, I can keep about 110 of it, as long as I continuously perpetually invest. But the thing is that it's very, very, very risky. And so, you know, it's like, do I want to give up some of the profit, some of my profits to reduce the risk that I expose myself to? Because if I expose myself to a lot of risk, I'm gonna run out of hours a day to work. I won't be able to be out here long enough because I have to go to work. I won't be able to be out here long enough to take care of the cattle properly, and then I will start having animals die. And so I got to think about that. Do I want to feed these animals an antibiotic through their feed on their first week here? I mean, that's one of the things that I was thinking about. If I fed these animals an antibiotic, the big negative would be that all of the animals would get fed antibiotics. And so even the healthy animals would be eating antibiotics. And even then, and that would probably reduce the amount of animals that need a shot by about 2/3. So I would anticipate that about 10 of the animals would get fixed up, and then I still need to give about 5 a shot of antibiotics. But I could feed these animals antibiotics, or but I don't really like that option. You know, but it don't matter what I like, right? I have to do what's necessary, because I don't want animals to start dying. But if I raise 2.5 weight calves, chances are I'm gonna need to give about 15 of them a shot of antibiotic, and I'm gonna have to pick and choose them very carefully. A lot of people that they don't know what a sick animal looks like, and then by the time they realize that the animal's sick, it's already been 2 days and the animal's practically dead. And so, you know, it's very, especially with these small calves, and these cattle, they're prey animals. They're not going to show signs of being sick. You got to look very carefully, and you got to know what to look for. And so, you know, it's like, do I raise the smaller animals and increase my workload but increase my profit, or do I go for a larger animal and decrease my workload but decrease my profits as well? And so that's one of the things that I got to get figured out in the next month. But that's it for me today, YouTube. Y'all have a good one.